Leora Ashford believed kindness revealed a person's true character more clearly than wealth ever could. Although she had been born into privilege, she had turned away from the powerful Ashford family years earlier, determined to earn every smile, every friendship, and every dream on her own. She rented a modest apartment above a flower shop where she worked each morning, finding peace in arranging bouquets for strangers celebrating love, hope, and second chances. One stormy evening, as rain hammered the streets, she spotted a frightened puppy stranded in the middle of a flooded road. Before she could reach it, another figure dashed into the traffic without hesitation. A young architect named Rowan Vale scooped the trembling animal into his arms just as a speeding taxi splashed past. Their eyes met as they laughed in relief, soaked from head to toe but grateful the puppy was safe. That unexpected meeting blossomed into something neither of them had anticipated. Rowan possessed quiet determination instead of flashy confidence. He dreamed of designing neighborhoods where ordinary families could afford beautiful homes, yet he struggled to find employers willing to support such ideals. Leora admired his compassion long before she admired his talent. Money remained scarce for Rowan. When he quietly admitted he was weeks behind on rent, Leora anonymously settled the overdue payment through his landlord, allowing him to believe an accounting mistake had spared him from eviction. She never sought recognition, convinced that generosity lost its meaning when applause became the reward. Months passed, and their affection deepened through countless ordinary moments. They shared inexpensive dinners from food carts, wandered through public gardens discussing impossible dreams, and filled a worn sketchbook with plans for the little house they hoped to build someday. Rowan often apologized for not being able to offer her luxury, but Leora always smiled. "You already give me something rarer," she told him. "You make me feel at home." Eventually Rowan's persistence earned him a position at the prestigious Arden Development Group, a company famous for designing extravagant skyscrapers. It was the opportunity he had waited years to receive. Leora celebrated his success with homemade pastries instead of expensive champagne, insisting that honest victories deserved sincere celebrations. His new workplace, however, introduced him to Celeste Arden, the ambitious daughter of the company's founder. Beautiful, influential, and accustomed to getting whatever she desired, Celeste quickly became fascinated by Rowan. She interpreted his politeness as admiration and his professionalism as a challenge. The first time Celeste encountered Leora, she dismissed her with a cold glance. "I didn't realize Rowan preferred simple company," she remarked with a mocking smile, letting her gaze linger on Leora's inexpensive dress. Leora answered gently, "Clothes tell people how much you spend. Kindness tells them who you are." The calm reply only deepened Celeste's resentment. Determined to remove her rival, Celeste began arranging situations that kept Rowan working late while spreading subtle rumors that he was becoming close to her. Rowan remained unaware, believing his long hours were merely part of proving himself. One evening the company hosted an exclusive celebration after securing a major contract. Rowan accepted a glass of sparkling wine, unaware that Celeste had instructed someone to tamper with his drink. Within minutes his vision blurred, and he struggled to remain conscious. At that very moment, Leora arrived carrying the dinner she had prepared to surprise him after work. She stepped into a private lounge and froze. Rowan lay half-conscious on a sofa while Celeste leaned against him, carefully arranging the scene just as photographers hidden outside snapped picture after picture. Celeste looked up, wearing the faint smile of someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. Leora's hands loosened. The dinner container slipped to the polished floor, scattering warm food across the marble. Rowan tried to lift his head, his lips forming her name, but the drug stole his strength before any explanation could escape. Silently, Leora removed the engagement ring from her finger and placed it beside the untouched bouquet she had brought for him. Without anger, without accusation, and without looking back, she walked out into the rain, leaving Rowan reaching helplessly toward a door that had already closed. The morning after Leora disappeared, Rowan awoke in a hospital bed with a pounding headache and fragments of the previous night scattered through his memory. The engagement ring she had left behind rested on the bedside table inside a small envelope delivered by a nurse. There was no note, only the silent weight of what had been lost. He called her phone repeatedly, rushed to the flower shop, and searched every place they had ever visited together, but she had vanished without leaving a trace. Meanwhile, Leora boarded the first train leaving the city. She stared out the window as familiar streets faded into distant hills, convincing herself that walking away was less painful than staying with unanswered questions. Although her heart urged her to believe Rowan, the image she had witnessed refused to loosen its grip. Hours later, the train stopped unexpectedly near a rural crossing where passengers were asked to wait while emergency crews cleared the tracks. As Leora stepped outside for fresh air, she heard frantic cries from the roadside. An elderly woman had collapsed while trying to shield a little boy from an out-of-control delivery truck rolling downhill. Without hesitation, Leora sprinted forward. She pulled the frightened child behind a stone barrier before diving toward the elderly woman. The truck scraped past only inches away, crashing into a roadside fence instead of striking them. Dust filled the air as stunned bystanders rushed over. The elderly woman, though shaken, grasped Leora's trembling hands with surprising strength. "You risked your life for strangers," she whispered. "Most people would have run." Leora smiled faintly. "Someone once taught me that fear should never be stronger than compassion." Local authorities arrived, and while verifying the woman's identity, one officer noticed the antique pendant hanging from Leora's neck. His expression changed instantly. "I've seen that family crest before," he murmured. The elderly woman's eyes widened. Tears gathered before she carefully touched the pendant. "Where did you get this?" "It belonged to my mother," Leora answered softly. The woman could barely speak. "It belonged to my daughter." Within days, DNA testing confirmed what neither of them had dared to hope. The elderly woman was Evelyn Ashford, chairwoman of the Ashford Group, and Leora was the granddaughter who had disappeared with her mother decades earlier after a bitter family dispute. News of the reunion spread through business circles with astonishing speed. Executives who had never heard Leora's name suddenly stood to welcome the rightful heir to one of the nation's largest fortunes. Leora accepted neither celebration nor luxury with excitement. Instead, she entered the Ashford headquarters wearing the same simple clothes she had always preferred. Employees expected arrogance but found quiet humility. On her first day, she ordered that unused executive dining budgets be redirected to fund scholarships for employees' children and expanded medical benefits for the company's lowest-paid workers. Her decision surprised even seasoned board members. Across the city, Rowan's life unraveled. Celeste, furious that he still rejected her advances despite Leora's departure, manipulated financial records to make it appear that Rowan had authorized fraudulent payments on a major construction project. Before he could defend himself, security escorted him from the building while co-workers watched in uncomfortable silence. His professional license was suspended, his reputation shattered overnight, and every firm that had once admired his talent refused to answer his calls. Unable to afford his apartment, Rowan moved into a modest boarding house. Yet hardship failed to harden him. One evening, while walking home, he spotted smoke pouring from an aging apartment building. Ignoring the danger, he rushed inside after hearing a child's cries. Carrying a little girl through thick smoke, he emerged coughing but alive moments before firefighters arrived. Reporters praised the mysterious hero, but Rowan quietly slipped away before anyone could ask his name. The rescue appeared on every news channel that evening. Watching from the Ashford estate, Leora froze when Rowan's soot-covered face briefly filled the screen. Despite everything that had happened, she recognized the same man who had once risked his life to save a frightened puppy in the rain. Doubt, long buried beneath heartbreak, stirred once again, and for the first time she began to wonder whether the truth behind their painful goodbye was far different from what she had believed. The news report lingered in Leora's thoughts long after the television had gone dark. Rowan had risked his life to save a stranger while expecting nothing in return. That single act clashed sharply with the image of the man she had walked away from months earlier. If his character had remained unchanged, perhaps her understanding of that terrible night had been incomplete. She instructed her chief of security to quietly reopen every detail surrounding the company celebration where their relationship had ended. No one outside her inner circle was told the reason. Officially, it was a routine corporate review. In reality, Leora was searching for the truth that had stolen her future. The investigation quickly uncovered troubling irregularities. Surveillance footage from the executive lounge had disappeared only hours after the party. Several security logs had been altered, and 2 technicians responsible for maintaining the cameras had resigned the following week without notice. Someone had erased the evidence with remarkable precision. While investigators continued digging, Rowan struggled to rebuild his life. Unable to find work as an architect, he accepted temporary jobs repairing damaged homes in neglected neighborhoods. Every evening he sketched affordable housing designs in a worn notebook, refusing to abandon the dream that had inspired him long before success had seemed possible. One afternoon, an elderly street musician collapsed outside a crowded train station after suffering a heart attack. Dozens of pedestrians hurried past, afraid to become involved. Rowan rushed forward, performed first aid while calling emergency services, and stayed beside the frightened man until paramedics arrived. Before leaving, he quietly paid the musician's overdue hospital deposit using nearly all the money he had earned that week. A young journalist witnessed the act and published the story online. Readers praised the anonymous worker whose compassion outweighed his own financial hardship. The article eventually reached Leora, strengthening her belief that Rowan could not have willingly betrayed her. Then the investigation produced its first breakthrough. A former hotel housekeeper requested a confidential meeting with Ashford security. She admitted that Celeste had bribed several employees to remain silent after witnessing Rowan collapse from a drug drink. Fear had kept her quiet, but guilt had become impossible to bear. "I saw him trying to stand," she confessed through tears. "He kept saying Miss Leora's name. He wasn't embracing Miss Arden. He could barely stay conscious." The testimony prompted investigators to search archived maintenance records from the hotel. Hidden inside an outdated backup server, they discovered an audio recording captured by an emergency microphone in the hallway outside the executive lounge. Although no video remained, every voice was unmistakably clear. Celeste's laughter echoed through the speakers. "Once she sees us together, she'll leave him forever. Then he'll have no one except me." The room fell silent as the recording ended. Leora closed her eyes, gripping the edge of the conference table. The truth she had longed for had finally arrived, but it brought no relief. Instead, it revealed that the man she loved had lost everything because of a carefully planned deception. Without delay, Ashford Group's legal department submitted the evidence to financial investigators, who uncovered an even broader network of corruption. Celeste had not only orchestrated the false scandal but had also manipulated company accounts, bribed employees, and forged documents to eliminate anyone who threatened her ambitions. The board of Arden Development convened an emergency meeting attended by shareholders, executives, and members of the press. Confident she remained untouchable, Celeste entered with practiced elegance. Her confidence vanished when the recovered audio recording echoed through the grand hall. Gasps filled the room. Investigators presented witness statements, financial records, and proof of fraud in rapid succession. Security officers stepped forward before Celeste could leave. As cameras flashed, she was escorted from the building in handcuffs, her carefully crafted image collapsing in front of the entire business world. News of Rowan's innocence spread just as quickly as the accusations once had. Construction firms rushed to offer him prestigious positions, hoping to repair the injustice he had suffered. Rowan declined every offer. "I won't rebuild my career until I've rebuilt my integrity," he told a reporter. "An innocent verdict restores my name, but it doesn't erase the pain others endured because of what happened." When Leora watched his interview, tears quietly rolled down her cheeks. She finally held the truth in her hands, yet one question remained unanswered. Could a love shattered by deception ever become stronger than it had been before? Several weeks passed before Leora found the courage to see Rowan in person. She learned that he had transformed an abandoned warehouse into a free evening workshop where teenagers from struggling families could study architecture, engineering, and design. Every drawing board had been repaired by Rowan himself, and every lesson was offered without charge. The project survived only because an anonymous donor quietly covered the rent each month. Rowan never discovered that the benefactor was Leora. Rather than interrupt his work, she watched from across the street. She saw him patiently encouraging students who doubted themselves, reminding them that talent mattered more than background. The same gentle spirit she had fallen in love with had survived betrayal, humiliation, and poverty. Before she could gather the courage to speak with him, disaster struck. A powerful earthquake rattled the city just after noon. Buildings trembled violently, windows shattered, and frightened crowds flooded the streets. Emergency sirens echoed in every direction as old structures began collapsing one after another. At that very moment, Leora was attending the opening of a children's history museum sponsored by the Ashford Foundation. When the shaking began, she helped teachers guide dozens of children toward the exits. Just as the final group reached safety, A massive stone beam crashed across the doorway, trapping Leora and 3 frightened children inside the damaged building. Outside, rescue crews struggled to reach them because repeated aftershocks threatened to bring down the remaining walls. Rowan, who had been helping reinforce damaged homes only a few blocks away, heard desperate cries from the museum. Ignoring warnings from firefighters, he rushed toward the unstable entrance. "The building could collapse at any second," a rescue captain shouted. Rowan answered without slowing. "Then every second matters." Inside, dust filled the air so heavily that breathing became difficult. He found the terrified children huddled beside Leora beneath a cracked support column. Working carefully, he lifted fallen debris piece by piece until a narrow escape path appeared. He carried the youngest child out first, then returned for the second, and then the third, refusing to stop despite the ceiling groaning above him. Only Leora remained. As another violent tremor shook the museum, the damaged column shifted. Rowan threw himself forward, shielding Leora as chunks of concrete crashed around them. Together they stumbled toward the exit just as the roof behind them gave way in a thunderous collapse. The crowd erupted in relieved applause when they emerged covered in dust but alive. For several moments neither of them spoke. Finally, Leora looked into Rowan's weary eyes. "I know the truth," she whispered. "I know you never betrayed me." Rowan lowered his head. "I wanted to tell you that night," he said quietly. "But wanting wasn't enough. I couldn't reach you before the lies did." Tears filled Leora's eyes. "I should have trusted the man I knew instead of the moment I saw." Rowan gently shook his head. "We both lost something precious. Let's not waste what we've been given today." Several months later, the city gathered for the opening of a remarkable new community. Instead of unveiling another luxury tower, the Ashford Group announced a partnership with Rowan to build beautiful, affordable neighborhoods, schools, parks, and emergency shelters for families who had lost homes in the earthquake. The project became a symbol of compassion rather than profit. During the ceremony, Rowan invited Leora to the center of the newly completed park. Instead of presenting an expensive diamond, he opened the worn sketchbook they had filled together years earlier. On the final page, beneath the drawing of their dream home, he had written a single sentence. "The strongest foundation isn't built with stone, it is built with trust restored." Leora smiled through happy tears before slipping the old engagement ring back onto her own finger. "I thought I lost my greatest treasure," she said softly. "It turns out I simply had to find my way back to it." Years later, children played beneath trees lining the streets of neighborhoods Rowan had designed and Leora had funded. Families who had once struggled now owned safe homes. Students graduated with scholarships from the Ashford Foundation, and the free workshop had grown into a respected academy for young architects. Whenever people praised their success, Leora and Rowan always answered the same way. "We became wealthy twice," Rowan would say. "Once through inheritance, and once through forgiveness." And together they proved that the happiest ending was never found in billions of dollars, but in two hearts that chose kindness over pride, truth over deception, and love over every obstacle life placed in their path.